afternoon and welcome everybody to our Eco-Theology course this afternoon. And our topic this afternoon is waste. Unfortunately, our speaker this afternoon, Charles Bakolo, who is from Malawi, who is a fantastic waste warrior, is not able to be with you. So I want to share a brief presentation about some of the challenges that are facing us with waste here in Africa. I'd like to start with just some pictures so that we can think about and reflect on the damage that waste is doing. First of all, to children who have to play in these conditions, to fish who have to eat, to those who drink this water from the rivers, to our animals, our cattle who are grazing in these conditions, and to sea creatures who are eating plastic. God says this, I brought you into a fertile land to eat its fruit and rich produce, but you came and defiled my land and made my inheritance detestable. We need to understand that plastic is forever. When we see this picture of a banana peel, it's biodegradable. That means within a couple of weeks, it will be gone away. But plastic will only break down into smaller and smaller pieces. Plastics break up. They don't go away. They don't break down like a banana peel. And a large piece of plastic can create many, many tiny pieces of plastic that we call microplastics. When we say we throw something away, there is no such place as away. Whatever you throw goes somewhere and somebody has to clean it up. Here we have a picture of Archbishop Thabo involved in the cleanup. I want to introduce you to this beautiful little albatross chick. This little baby lives on an island called Miwe Island, which is 2,000 kilometers away from the nearest human habitation. Now, his mother albatross goes out to find food on the oceans and picks up what she thinks is food, but it's actually little pieces of plastic, and she feeds it to her baby. And then these little chicks die of starvation because their stomachs are full of plastic. Now, the same thing is happening to our cows. People are now reporting that their cows are dying of starvation for their stomachs are full of plastic. By 2050, there will be more plastic in the ocean than fish. Around the world in the oceans, there are what we call gyres, which comes from the word gyrate. So these are these rotating enormous areas of plastic. Now, when you go through that area, you won't see a lot of plastic floating. What you will see is a sort of cloudiness. Now, the cloudiness is made up of tiny, tiny microplastics. And as you come to the center of the gyre, you will see more and more pieces of plastic floating in the ocean. And as you can see from the map, these areas are enormous. For example, the Great Pacific Gyre is 7 million tons of weight. It is half the size of South Africa. The plastic pieces and microplastics are up to 2 meters deep. And in that area, there are 6 times more plastic than plankton. Plankton is the main food, those tiny foods that many ocean animals, from the great whales through to the small fishes, will eat. And this is what this area might look like. You can see the cloudiness made up of the tiny microplastics through to the plastic bags, pieces of broken appliances, the toys, the things that we just throw out. Are we eating fish or plastic? Scientists have found high amounts of microplastics in fish and other seafood. If you cut open your piece of fish, you won't see it, but there are tiny microscopic pieces of microplastic in your fish. A study in Joburg found that drinking water, which is coming out of our taps, is now polluted with microplastics. So imagine even worse, the water that we're drinking from a bottle, plastic water. A surgeon recently who was cutting open a man in an operation found plastics within his lungs. Plastics also have a huge impact socially on us. When we have flooding, the roads flood because the the gutters become full of plastic and make misery worse for those who are in flooded areas. And moving on from plastic to styrofoam, some people call it Foamolite, some people call it polystyrene. This product has become very, very popular. I mean, particularly in churches, we use it for our funerals, we use it for our big events. And styrofoam is particularly bad because it breaks down into tiny, tiny pieces. Sea creatures think that they are fish eggs and eat them. And when you use styrofoam for hot food or drinks, the chemicals leach into the food or drink. It is a health hazard, particularly bad for children, and you must never put a styrofoam into a microwave. We love styrofoam for our big events, but we forget that Jesus fed 5,000 people and said, "Let there be no waste" in John 6, verse 12. He told his disciples to clear up the waste, to put it into baskets, to take the leftover food to those who were hungry, and to leave that place as they had found it. And yet you'll find after our large church events, the place is littered with plastics, with styrofoam, with litter. The other issue is that plastic and styrofoam are made from oil, and the production and burning is contributing to climate change. Now, oil companies are beginning to be worried because we know that globally there's a shift happening away from petrol cars to electric cars, which means that less oil will be needed. And so they are wanting to increase the amount of plastic that we are producing. And they are building new petrochemical plants and wanting us to use more and more plastic. Another issue is when we burn plastic, it releases toxic chemicals, which are especially dangerous for those with any kind of lung problems, whether it's asthma, bronchitis. And you find that it is in the poorer communities where the government is not providing adequate waste pickups. And these are the communities becoming impacted by air pollution from burning of plastics. So what can we do as the church? We have to say this is the last straw. The first step is to refuse. Now, as the WWF did a survey of South Africa's worst plastic offenders, and they found in the pickups and cleanups that people were doing, the worst was the plastic shopping bags, the lids of coffee cups, the plastic straws, the water bottles, the earbuds, etc. Now, many of these items we can actually just refuse. We don't have to use a straw ever again. We can use our lips to drink a Coke. We don't have to use a plastic shopping bag. We can take another bag, and if you forget to take your bag, you can ask for a box in the shop, or you can just carry the things that you are buying. There are alternatives to many of these products. South Africans are particularly bad on plastic bags. We use 8 billion plastic bags annually, which is the equivalent of 500 bags per person per year. Now that needs to stop. We can just say, bring your own bag. Let's all say no to plastic bags as a starting point. The second thing is throw away plastic cutlery and plates. Now, I like this sign. It says, it's pretty amazing that our society has reached a point where the effort necessary to extract oil from the ground, ship to a refinery, turn it into plastic, shape it appropriately, truck it to a store, buy it and bring it home is considered to be less effort than what it takes to just wash the spoon. I think we all have become lazy at our events to just wash up, and that is the simplest answer to plastic pollution. Some countries have brought in bans. Kenya has brought in a ban against the plastic bags. In Rwanda, you will not find a plastic bag. And I must say that African countries are leading the way in terms of banning of some plastic items. Our challenge is the implementation of those bans. But if your country has not banned, why not start as the church? The Anglican Church of Southern Africa in 2019 declared a climate emergency and called for a ban on plastics. Our Provincial Mothers Union has called on all Mothers Union branches to stop using styrofoam. But the problem is implementation. We pass the resolutions and then we find they're still using styrofoams and plastics at a parish level. I must take my hat off to Malawi. The Green Anglicans and Creation Care Network have been great advocates for single-use thin plastics. They pushed the government to ban the single-use plastics. only to discover that that ban was not being implemented. And then they took them back again to court together with a broad range of people from civil society. And their voice has been very heard in Malawi. One of the things we really need to do is to cut the loop. And when plastic is in a circle, creatures can become devastatingly hurt by it. So before you throw out your items, please always cut the loops. We can have recycling projects to raise church funds or to assist the unemployed. You're not going to make a lot of money, but at least it's some money for food or for your youth activities. And we can all be involved in cleanups. These can be organized so that they're great fun for the young people. You can have competitions, different groups to see who can collect the most. And we can reuse and upcycle. This is a project that the Mothers Union in Lesotho did. They cut up the plastic bags into strips, and then they use them to sew, to crochet or to knit, so they can make hats and different items. And we can do cleanups and plantings. You know, when you do a cleanup in a certain area, you find that 2 weeks later it's filthy again. But if you can work with the local community, with that street, and claim it back, planting succulents, making it look beautiful, get the children involved so they feel proud, then you've got a much better chance of that site being reclaimed and not going back to becoming a dump site again. And then there's some good news. In 2022, the United Nations passed a resolution to have a legally binding international treaty on plastics. Our task is to push our own governments to make that treaty as strong as possible, and to make sure that it is implemented when it is in place. And I'd like to end with this verse from Psalm 113. God lifts the poor from the dust and the needy from the garbage dump. God sets them among princes, even the princes of his own people. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you very much for your kind words, and a warm welcome to the whole team that is joining us today for this presentation. My apologies for coming in a bit late for the presentation. And I am quite sure that as my presentation on the introduction part, I'm sure one way or the other, the terms have been defined in terms of what eco-theology is and what it is concerned about, that it is concerned by issues to do with sustainability and human domination. But we are much more preoccupied by the relationship between, us humans and our relationship with the earth, and in particular, waste and pollution issues. I'm going to zero in on a few scriptures that we're going to be using. Isaiah chapter 24, verse 4 to 6b, and Jeremiah chapter 12 and verse 4. We can go to the next part of our presentation, which is introduction continued. So in terms of our approach as Christians, Christianity has embraced and pursued a vision for the well-being of the earth and all creation. In terms of one of our patriarchs, in terms of environment, we cannot look beyond St. Francis of Assisi, who is a proponent of Christian eco-theology, and he had a great influence in terms of our approach to our relationship between humanity and the earth. We will endeavor to explain how certain human behaviors and habits have caused great mourning and withering of the earth as stated in our two texts. And in my presentation, we're going to be looking a little bit deeply into how the earth is mourning and withering from an environmental perspective. What does it mean for the environment to mourn, and how does it mourn? It will take quite some interest for a particular person, especially for us environmental advocates, to actually realize that indeed the earth is mourning and that it is withering. And it's important for us to know how and why it is mourning and withering. In terms of what Isaiah chapter 24, verse 6, 4 and 6b says, the earth mourns and withers. It is polluted by its inhabitants, for they transgressed the laws, and violated statutes, broke the everlasting covenant. Therefore, a curse devours the earth, and those who live in it are held guilty. This is on the slide number 4. So, in trying to explain what Isaiah 24 is saying in terms of the relationship between humanity and the environment, we find that scripture points out directly that the inhabitants have polluted and transgressed the earth in terms in the environment. It also talks about the violation of the environment, and I've put down the pictorial example of how a river has been polluted, and I'm going to show you a little bit more as we proceed. This scripture gives a true reflection of the condition to which the earth is manipulated and abused by its inhabitants. Mourning and withering signifies a sad and death type of feeling. If the earth is in such a state, it means that there are several factors that are causing the earth to feel that way. We might want to ask ourselves or reflect as how humanity can cause such pain to the earth. That is pollution and waste. Rivers that have become dam sites, waterways that are blocked by waste, and air pollution. Urban flash floodings are also attributed to the blocked waterways and polluted rivers. Mourning can be in terms of flooding, epidemics that are waterborne diseases caused by contaminated water sources. We go to Jeremiah chapter 12, verse 4. I'm going to read what it says here. How long must this land mourn? Even the grass in the fields has withered. The wild animals and birds have disappeared because of the evil in the land. For the people have said, the Lord doesn't see what's happening. Similar to what Isaiah says, the mourning continues to be repeated, expressing sorrow to death of something, the act of grieving by the environment. It can be argued, as Maltman points out, in Genesis chapter 1, verse 28, will have to be interpreted in an entirely new way, not to subdue the earth, but free the earth through fellowship with it. That is according to one scholar, a theologian called Jürgen Moltmann. Psalm 24, verse 1 and 2 says, and I'm going to quote, the earth is the Lord's and all that fills it, the world and all its inhabitants. Human participation of love and justice is necessary to maintain creation and cosmos. Now I'm going to go into particular areas to which we can actually identify the mourning and withering of the earth. And I'm happy that in one of the breakaways, the question it was raised and some certain individuals were actually talking about how they view the mourning and withering of the environment. So I'm going to go to waste and pollution. Land, water, air, and wildlife are affected by urbanization due to a high human density, which then causes high demand on resources. The environment is impacted, or as in the words of this presentation, it mourns and withers in several ways, which include, but not limited to, the following: solid waste, water supply, sanitation, and air quality. In terms of water quality, many rivers in the urban and peri-urban areas are more like open sewers, like what will be shown in the images to follow. The lack of proper sanitation has a drastic impact on water courses. People in industry use rivers for waste disposal, which contains organic material and nutrients and different types of toxin pollutants. These make the water unsafe for humans to either drink or irrigation as well as being harmful to aquatic animals. The effects are huge. The change of quality of surface water also affects groundwater because they are linked to pollutants from the surface will infiltrate down and contaminate soil and groundwater. Just as Isaiah says, the whole natural system is violated and the earth mourns. Here I've put examples of the river in Mashingo. I happened to be in Mashingo a few weeks ago, and I was quite interested at what I was seeing as I was researching about this presentation. You can tell from that river that it is at the periphery of the city. It provides part of our drinking water, but it is highly polluted by waste. And as a result, the water does not flow. Picture A, if you can zoom in, you can find a lot of waste that has been thrown into that river. Picture B, which is to your right, you can see that that water is stagnant and not moving. And from that particular, picture, you can see by literally just looking at it that it is contaminated, number one. Number two, that it is not moving, which means that there are waterborne diseases that are being encouraged in that particular site of the river. You can also, in terms of mosquitoes and malaria, it can be a very dangerous area for such mosquitoes to move around and then to affect the human population. And by so doing, that becomes a mourning and withering of the earth. In terms of solid waste, I have two pictures that I have just taken. Friends, I'm sure if you are in urban parts or urban areas, or in any areas that are close to shopping areas in most parts of Africa, this site is not new. And I could have taken as many thousands of pictures because every corner in most urban areas, they are heaps of waste. But I want to concentrate on picture B. Picture B, if we can just zoom in to picture B in particular shows us, the type of waste that is being thrown around in most urban areas. We can see diapers, we can see plastic, we can see plastics that cannot decompose, which means that by so doing, the earth is indeed mourning and withering. I hope you can relate to what I was just pointing out in picture B. However, with that in mind, we then want to just look at issues to do with solid waste. If one takes a closer look, as I've said, onto the pictures, you see different types of waste. We can identify the following items: glass bottles, plastic bottles, used diapers, plastic paper, and cardboard boxes. All these items have one common element: they hardly decompose, which means they can only contribute to the mourning of the earth as it failed to digest. Secondly, two things come to mind: waste management crisis and deliberate human activity that causes harm to the environment, both of which can be stopped. The community can engage in safe waste management services. Most of the items mentioned above can be recycled, thereby contributing to sustainable use of natural resources. Urban waste often ends up in illegal dumps on the streets, open spaces, wastelands, drains, or rivers. All pictures above used on the presentation are from one high-density suburb in Harare. called Budirio, which is where I'm from. Every corner has one identical feature of waste dumps. We have mobilized in our area in few streets each and manage our waste through cleanup campaigns while policing those who come to dump on our corners. We can go to the next slide. The next slide there shows the action that we are taking in our diocese and in our country, in most parts of our churches. That's pilgrims cleaning up in the last Bernard Mzeki pilgrimage, where we had designated areas waste, designated areas of type of waste, biodigested waste, plastic waste, and we grouped it, and then we managed waste, and that's part of the team that we work with in our diocese. I now want to talk about what we're going to call liberation solidarity model in terms of waste and pollution management. This model advances that the church is in solidarity with the weakest. With that part of the creation, liberation theology articulates the biblical motif of liberation in Exodus and other passages. It can be argued that if the earth is mourning and withering because of human activity, then there should be advocacy for liberation of creation. What this basically means is the word term liberation means somebody has to stand in for somebody in order to liberate an oppressed individual. And in this case, we're saying the earth is being oppressed by its inhabitants. And we, as environmentalists, environmental advocates, and as a church and as Christians, we can actually use the same model to fight for the liberation of the environment. In Exodus, the poor cry to Yahweh to be liberated, and Yahweh hears their cry, and God takes the side of the poor. In the same manner, the renewal of the earth comes in response to the cry of the poor and dumb creatures which are suffering from the waste and pollution. However, unlike humans, the earth responses are catastrophic to humans. In brackets, it responds in droughts, in harsh climate conditions, and in flooding. So for me, I actually think this is quite a plausible way and approach to which we can actually work in response to the mourning and withering of the environment. We as environmental advocates can actually become the liberators of the environment. So as I come to the conclusion, the Old Testament views the earth as precious and to be preserved. The text that we used in the presentation show that the earth is in mourning and withering due to irresponsible human activities. We can prefer and proffer a few ideas. Number one, change of biblical interpretation of the creation story, that we are not there to dominate the earth, but we are to cohabit and live with the earth. Number two, reduce obtaining more than what one can meaningfully use. Recycling, reusing, properly disposing of what we continue to use, which means that we are advocating for recycling. Biodigesters that can provide energy while also managing waste. In terms of our questions, I actually know that the back room is actually gone and looked at one of the questions. But the second question, which is an assignment question, is that individuals are to write a project proposal as to how your community can best deal with pollution and management. You offering about 3 options that are simple and yet practical. So this is my presentation, friends. I will open if there's still time for questions. we can take a few questions, but if there are none, I'll hand over back to our facilitators.